Well, Johannesburg motorists are being advised to express extreme caution on the roads this morning due to service delivery protests in several areas south of Johannesburg. A video was earlier uploaded on social media showing protests early this morning. Areas affected include Eldorado Park, Diepkloof, Pimville, Meadowlands, Freedom Park and Brown Fisherville. It's understood that the protests are against prepaid electricity in the Soweto area. Roads are reported to be open now as the debris has been moved.
The N12, which was obstructed earlier between Golden Highway and the N1, that is just on the southern side of Freedom Park, has been cleared. Mojaji Street in Pimville, also Klipspruit Valley Road at Orlando, those roads have been cleared now with much of the burning tires on the side of the road. Officers are monitoring the areas very closely.
Do we know what sparked these protests?
Yes, the information that we've received is that people are unhappy about prepaid water and electricity meters, and they're also complaining that they need more houses from the areas which are affected.
Can you confirm for us if there's any properties that's being vandalized?
Except for cars which may have been damaged when the cars were stoned, that was on the N1 at Grasmere, probably vehicles damaged, and then there was also Metro Police vehicles damaged in the process. One patrol car was shot at with live ammunition on the N12 earlier this morning.
For the update on the latest on their protest in Soweto, we are joined live by SABC's Chriselda Lewis. A very good morning to you, Chriselda. Of course, coming to you from the south of Johannesburg, just seeing the scenes of what took place this morning as smoke continues to billow behind you. Take us through the situation this morning.
Well, Shante, the situation has been very volatile since about 3 o'clock this morning after a communication had been sent out by residents from various of the areas that you mentioned, including Eldorado Park, Freedom Park, here where I'm broadcasting from, as well as Lenasia, as far towards the Grasmere toll plaza, where they said they would barricade and protest since this morning over quite a number of issues, over land, over prepaid water and electricity meters, as well as housing as well. That's a sentiment that has been shared by quite a number of the residents here. As you can see, that here in Freedom Park, the tires continue to burn. Schooling has also been disrupted in this area. We've also seen some of the students who were meant to be in classrooms around about this time. I will walk towards my right in a few moments to show you that most of these children have been moved away from these schools as well. While many of the provincial roads that were affected this morning have been reopened, what we see now is residents taking their protest action into the various communities, including here at Freedom Park. Let's move towards this direction. You can see here towards my right, these learners who were supposed to be in the classroom. I'll ask our camera person to go towards there. These learners who were supposed to be in the classroom at about 8 o'clock this morning are still standing here on the side of the road. And one of the parents that I spoke to a bit earlier on also indicated that she was going to fetch her child from class because she heard over the radio that the situation itself is quite volatile. So you've got both young and old on these streets at this time. We'll chat to some of the concerned residents now to find out what these... There you have a community member telling these learners to go back home because they're going to get hurt. Siswam, let's start with you. What exactly is the problem in this area? We understand the protest is affecting many of the areas in the south of Johannesburg.
Yonke into nje since basithembisile last year bathi bazobuya kithi azange babuye bathembise abantu ukuthi bazonika indawo
48 stands we waiting for.
Yes, mabefika lapho baye bakhishwa futhi babuyiswa abathi mabebuya back. So abantu bakwatile bafuna indawo zabo leyo bathembise yona i-farmland leyo bebethe bazoyifaka.
Masive kuwe bhuti, we understand that kunabantu who've been waiting since 2006 for East End or even earlier. Kuthiwa ke ngoku makancincisise.
This week's mama, kufe 5 yabantu yama leaders wapha there should be a land reform, and then into zethu basithatha basithengisa izindlu itende abantu naba balalanga bakhempile laphayana isafety abantu bayafa, people are dying Life Freedom Park. This week alone there's more than 80 deaths at Life Freedom Park. Life Freedom Park alone, this week alone, kule long weekend, go for 8 abantu, including leaders, and then when people, when they don't care about the safety at Life Freedom Park. So,
all right, there's more shots that are being fired right now towards that direction. A bit earlier on, Shante, as well, we did see police. Shante, I'm sure you can see our camera person, Japan, panning towards what has been going on since very early this morning. More rubber bullets being fired as police try to disperse some of the protesting residents. You may not see much of it because as police continue to patrol these areas, they keep running into the nearby informal settlement here as well as the formal housing. So you will not see many of the protesters. Instead, what you will see is burning tires. Their police heading towards, or rather into, this residential area here in Freedom Park, trying to move some of the tires as well that have been placed in the middle of the road that have been blockading several of the provincial roads this morning as well. That now is all being cleared. It was really traffic chaos this morning as people tried to get to work. I think in particular because since we come from that long weekend, you had schools reopening this morning as well. And that had been disrupted because of this protest action. Let's just continue our discussion with the lady we were chatting to a bit earlier on. And just find out what, in addition, are some of their concerns. Seswam beni complain ngezindlu uqaluze ngapha mama beni complain njengezindlu nisithi akunankathalo ye safety ekhoyo la eFreedom Park nani futhi kuthiwa kunabantu bebelinde for izindlu since 2006 kodwa akukabi khonto ekhoyo.
Okay, into eyenzakalayo la eFreedom Park bathengisa izindlu kune 35 eyakhiwe la ANC only to find out yathengisela ama prison warder. Prison order ahlale 35, which is asebenza under government, which is we are not working. So umashatile usayinise indawo yase Southern Farm. So we went there last week. So they remove us, take our shacks, everything of us. So we went back to Nkomponi. We're staying in Nkomponi right now. We don't have where to go. That's why we are angry like this. Yes.
Essentially, Shante, at this point, is that it's the very same sentiment. This is not the first time that there's been a protest in this area. You'd recall there was a similar violent protest that took place here over the past couple of months, also to last year. We'll move towards this direction and just show you exactly what's taking place. So the very same issues that the community has been complaining about have resurfaced now again, and this, in the majority, pertains to housing as well as the prepaid electricity and water as well. As police try to remove these barricades, you can see that taxi which drives through this area to ferry people from here to their various workplaces or to town. They also have to try and find a way to drive through here. The more police try and remove some of this debris, the more the community comes from different areas. So police do have their hands quite full here this morning, trying to deal with the situation here as schooling has been affected. Others have not gone to work as well. And these residents say they're going to continue with their protest action. But it's a recurring situation in this area there, Shante, because last year, you'd recall, many of the foreign-owned shops in this area were also looted. And that's something that the community has tried to avoid from taking place here this morning, saying that even though there had been many promises that had been made by the then Human Settlements MEC and Gauteng, Paul Mashatile, they say nothing has happened since then. And many of the claims of corruption, every time we see these protests, that's that's one of the elements that certainly does come up, the issue of corruption, reiterating again here this morning, community members, that the sale of houses, they say, is quite prominent in this area where there are people who've been waiting for over decades in order to access housing, and that is simply sold to people who would move into the area just a couple of months ago. So really a situation that needs to be attended to by the authorities in the Gauteng government. And these residents are also saying that as you head, of course, closer and closer to an election next year, you might see quite a lot of these protests again really creeping up as residents try to make their various grievances known. And in the majority, we move to the area of Lenasia, we move to the area of Soweto, we're here in Freedom Park, in Eldorado Park as well, where the residents are sharing the same sentiment about what their concerns are. So we'll continue to monitor the situation here. We'll try to get our camera person out the way as well, as we're trying to broadcast in the middle of the road here, Shante, just to get the cars as well to move away from here. But really, we'll monitor the situation from this area over the next couple of hours as residents have vowed to continue with their action, even though you have a high police presence, a high Metro police presence as well. Really, residents are saying it's a total shutdown for them, and they will continue with their protest action until someone in authority in the Gauteng provincial government comes to address them.
And then, with that being said, Chriselda, does that mean at this point in time still no representative from the municipality as well as the government authority has addressed the protesters as well as their concerns? And, you know, also mentioning that this is not the first time that it's happening.
Yeah. Well, certainly this is not the first time. What you really hear, Shante, in the number of times that we've covered several of the protests around the Gauteng area, is that while you may have someone in authority who comes to address the residents in these areas that have been affected, many promises are made to them, but many of those promises don't come to fruition. So then many of these residents are now saying then that that's what sparks the frustration amongst them to take back to the streets once again. So that's what you're hearing. While there are houses, yes, and promises that there will be housing, and indeed there has been houses that have been built in some of these areas. You'd know in one of the areas that's affected, which is called Lehigh, over the past couple of years, there have been a number of houses that have been built there. But what then seems to creep in, according to what residents are saying, is that the element of corruption, where the houses are then built, but those houses are given to people who are not supposed to receive them. And then you get frustration from those who've been waiting on these lists for over a decade. And once that happens, then you find residents taking to the street who believe that those who then receive those houses have jumped the line, if I may, and have not followed the process. And some even argue that the houses that have been given over to these individuals are friends of those who are in particular positions of power, whether it's at local level here or at municipal level itself. So this is not the first time we've had instances such as this, Shante. As I indicated, in the last time there was a protest in this area, we saw foreign-owned shops that had been looted as well, and quite a lot of damage that had taken place. So every single time that happens, we tend to see the very same action by these residents who believe that while there may be intervention time and time again, but some of their demands are absolutely not met. And if they are, if government does try to meet them halfway, there's an element of corruption itself that does creep in. But we'll stay on those visuals at this time. Police again trying to clear up in this area. We'll move around, quite difficult, Shante, to try and move to the different areas. As this one is cleaned up or cleared up by police, they have to move to another place where these protests again start flaring up. But we'll try to bring you as much as we can from this area as it all unfolds in Lenasia, Soweto, Eldorado Park, as well as here in Freedom Park, and as far as the Grasmere Toll Plaza.
Definitely. Chriselda, this also speaks, of course, to, you know, the bigger picture here, and that protests now seem to be taking on a ripple effect across the country, in many people resorting to violence and vandalism to, you know, sort of get the attention of authorities, or at least municipal level.
Yeah. Well, that's right. They've continuously become more violent, Shante. Many of those that we have covered over the past couple of months into last year, you've seen the levels of violence increase with people going as far as burning municipal buildings and other issues. But what they say is, at this time, they do not believe that their concerns are addressed if they do not resort to violence. You'll see here, this one placard that I'm having a look at will really paint a picture for you in terms of what really is the issue pertaining to these residents. Let's move towards this direction. I see our camera person is still focused on the police, but this placard, which I will put right here in front of you, basically says we cannot stop until we get land, and as promised, 48,000 stands, Lindiwe, Poma Shatile, and Mashaba must fall. So there are quite a number of issues that have been bubbling under for a couple of months into last year pertaining to the issue of land and stands. And as I indicated there, Shante, is that while there may have been stands that have been allocated to residents, they claim that corruption is one of the major issues that has crept into this community, where these houses are allocated to people who are not supposed to get them. So the violence itself continues, and it gets more violent as we speak, and police have been firing rubber bullets since this morning and are trying to bring the situation under control at this stage. So very difficult to follow the protests around these different areas as they continue to flare up in different parts, but we'll try to get to you as much as possible.
Definitely. Thank you very much for giving us that update. SABC's Chriselda Lewis on the protests that are currently taking place in and around the south of Johannesburg. Also seeing there that police contingent, also hearing the words from the community residents there as to why they are protesting this morning. Also seeing school children not having made their way to school this morning as they have been affected this morning. We will continue to give you updates on what is taking place with regards to those protests south of Johannesburg.